In a small courtroom tucked away in a quiet town, Monica Reynolds stood at the front facing Judge Harold Thompson, the air heavy with the weight of the situation. She had found herself in the sun streamed through the windows, casting long shadows across the hardwood floors as the judge in his black robe looked down at her with a stern gaze, his glasses perched at the tip of his nose. He was an older man with a reputation for strict rulings and little sympathy for those who didn't follow the rules. Monica was no stranger to adversity, but today felt different. She wasn't just fighting for a small violation, she was fighting for something far bigger: her community, her family, and her future. She had always believed in the power of people and in the potential of her small town, the one she had grown up in and come back to years later to make a difference. The community center she had founded had become a lifeline for many young people in the area, providing after-school programs, mentorship, and a safe space for those who needed it most. Monica was passionate about her work, and for her, it wasn't just a job, it was her purpose. But this violation, though small in the grand scheme of things, had the power to derail everything she had worked so hard to build. Judge Thompson cleared his throat, his voice gruff as he addressed her across the courtroom. Monica felt a tightness in her chest, but she kept her composure. It was important not to show fear or desperation. Not now, not when so much was at stake. He recited the details of the zoning law. She had unknowingly broken. Her community center was operating in a space that hadn't been approved for commercial use, the kind of thing that could easily be overlooked in a town that had long struggled to attract businesses and new opportunities. But the law was the law, and it didn't seem to matter to the judge whether she was helping kids or not. Monica spoke up, her voice steady, as she explained her position. Judge Thompson could see how much the center meant to her, how much she had invested, not just in the building, but in the lives of the people she served. She told him about the programs, the scholarships she had raised, funds for the way she had connected with local leaders to provide food for families during tough times. But as she spoke, she noticed the judge's expression didn't change. He was unmoved. He wasn't interested in hearing about her passion or her sacrifices. He only cared about the violation and how it needed to be addressed. As the judge handed down the ruling, Monica felt the familiar sting of injustice, but she did her best not to show it. The fine was steep, far more than she could afford, but in the end, it wasn't just about the money. It was about something deeper: the message it sent to her and to the people who looked to her for guidance. She was a small business owner, a woman of color, and in that courtroom, she was just another case, another violation to be processed, nothing more, nothing less. With a final tap of the gavel, Judge Thompson declared the case closed, and Monica felt her heart sink. She had lost this battle, but she wasn't ready to give up yet, not by a long shot, not when there was so much more to be done. She took a deep breath, and as she walked out of the courtroom, she knew this wasn't the end of her story, it was just the beginning. As Monica stepped out of the courtroom, the weight of the ruling settled heavily on her shoulders. The bright midday sun hit her face, but it did little to lift her spirits. She had expected some form of resistance, but hearing the judge's words and seeing the disinterest in his eyes stung more than she had anticipated. She had always believed that her work spoke for itself, that her dedication to the community would be seen as a positive force. But in that courtroom, she was just another defendant caught in a system. She walked slowly down the steps, the sound of her shoes clicking against the concrete echoing in the quiet air. A crowd had gathered outside, some curious about the case, others just enjoying the afternoon in the town square. Monica felt their eyes on her, but none of their faces were familiar. As she passed them, she noticed a few whispers and exchanged glances, though no one dared to approach her directly. She could feel the judgment, the questions lingering in the air, but she didn't stop to engage. She had more important things to focus on. Monica's phone buzzed in her pocket, pulling her from her thoughts. It was a text from Kara Miller, a local reporter who had been following her case. Kara had reached out to Monica earlier, asking for an interview after the ruling was made. Monica had declined at first, but now, with the fine hanging over her head, she felt that speaking out might be her only chance to reclaim some control over the narrative. The message read, "I know it's been a tough day, but would you be willing to talk? Your side of the story matters, and the people deserve to hear it." Monica stared at the message for a moment, the decision weighing heavily on her. It was risky, but maybe it was the right move. After all, the more people heard her story, the more they would understand the significance of what she was trying to do. With a deep breath, she typed back, "I'm open to it. Meet me at the coffee shop in an hour." Within minutes, Kara had agreed, and Monica made her way to the cafe. She felt a strange sense of purpose now, the sting of the fine still fresh, but her resolve beginning to harden. The people in this town had no idea who they were dealing with. She wasn't just some business owner in trouble, she was someone who had a vision, a mission that went far beyond the confines of a small community center. When Monica arrived at the coffee shop, Kara was already waiting, her notebook and recorder ready. Kara was a young journalist, known for her drive and her ability to get to the heart of a story. As they sat down, Kara wasted no time in asking the tough questions. Monica answered them all honestly, though her voice remained calm, almost distant at times, as she recounted the events that led to her run-in with the law. She spoke about the center, the children, the parents who relied on her, and how she had been working tirelessly to make a positive impact. But it wasn't just about the center. Monica shared her deeper ambition, her desire to create lasting change, not only for her community, but for the entire country. She spoke about the injustices she had seen, the people who had been left behind, and the systemic issues that needed to be addressed. "This fine," she said with quiet conviction, "is just a small part of the bigger picture. It's a sign of how we've been conditioned to see people like me, people from neighborhoods like mine, as less than, as people who don't matter. But I'm not backing down. I won't let this stop me." Kara listened intently, jotting down every word. The passion in Monica's voice was undeniable, and for the first time, Kara realized there was something much bigger at play here. This wasn't just a story about a fine or a zoning violation. It was a story about resilience, about fighting for what's right, and about standing up against a system that often overlooked people like Monica. Kara knew this was the beginning of something much more significant than a local news piece. When the interview ended, Kara shook Monica's hand, promising to tell her story honestly. As Monica left the coffee shop, she felt a spark of hope. The fine may have been a setback, but it wasn't the end. If anything, it was just the beginning of a much larger journey. The town would soon know more about Monica Reynolds than they ever expected, and she wasn't about to let them forget it. As the days passed, Monica's life began to shift in ways she hadn't anticipated. The interview with Kara Miller had been published, and it quickly gained traction beyond the small town. The piece painted a picture of a woman who was more than just a local leader. She was a visionary with a mission. People across the region started taking notice. The calls started pouring in, first from community members who supported her, then from local politicians, activists, and even a few business leaders. Monica was now a name people were discussing, and it was clear that her story was resonating on a level she hadn't expected. But while the attention felt good, Monica knew this wasn't just about the fine or the media coverage. This was bigger than her community center. It was about creating a world where people like her, the ones often overlooked or dismissed, had a voice, a place at the table. She had always dreamed of making a difference on a larger scale, but now, with this growing attention, that dream began to feel within reach. Monica had always believed in the power of community, of grassroots movements, but she realized now that she had the potential to lead not just her town, but her country. In private moments, Monica would allow herself to imagine the possibility of something greater. What if she could run for office? What if she could one day be the one making the decisions, shaping the policies that impacted lives across the nation? The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. She had no political experience, no network of high-powered connections, and certainly no vast fortune to bankroll her campaign. But none of that had stopped her before. She had built the community center from the ground up with little more than determination and the support of the people who believed in her. If she could do that, why not this? The idea took root slowly at first. Monica started researching. She read books on leadership, watched interviews with successful politicians, and began attending local political events. She reached out to friends who had experience in advocacy and organizing, tapping into the network of like-minded individuals who had supported her community efforts. They all encouraged her to take the leap, reminding her that the system needed fresh voices, people who truly understood the struggles of everyday people. In one particularly quiet moment, sitting at her kitchen table after putting her children to bed, Monica made a decision. She wasn't just going to be a bystander in her own life. She was going to run for president. At first, the thought of it seemed absurd. A woman from a small town running against powerful figures with vast resources and decades of political experience. But as she thought about the challenges she had already faced, the obstacles she had overcome, it no longer seemed impossible. Monica had spent her life fighting for the people who had no voice, and now perhaps it was time for her to use her own voice on a much larger stage. She wasn't going to back down just because the odds were against her. The next morning, Monica made a few phone calls, reaching out to trusted allies and advisors. She shared her vision, her plan, and her growing conviction that she could bring about real change. To her surprise, the response was overwhelmingly positive. People believed in her, and they were ready to stand by her. From that moment forward, Monica knew her life was about to change forever. The road ahead would be tough, filled with setbacks, doubts, and challenges she couldn't yet imagine, but she was ready. Her community center was just the beginning. Monica Reynolds wasn't going to stop at local change. She was going to fight for the entire nation, and nothing, not even the ruling from Judge Thompson, was going to stand in her way. As Monica's decision to run for president took root, her life became a whirlwind of activity. She began organizing her thoughts, mapping out her vision, and assembling a team of people who share her passion for change. The small town that once saw her as just another local leader was about to see her transform into a powerful contender. Monica wasn't just fighting for her community anymore. She was fighting for the entire nation, for those who had been silenced, ignored, or left behind by the very system that was supposed to protect them. Her campaign wasn't built on wealth or celebrity endorsements. It was built on the trust of people like her, everyday folks who knew what it felt like to struggle, to fight for what was right, to push forward despite the odds. Monica understood the value of grassroots efforts, and she knew how to mobilize people who felt disenfranchised. She had spent years building relationships in the community, and now those relationships were paying off. From local small business owners to activists and educators, people started showing up, offering their time, resources, and expertise. Monica's campaign wasn't just hers, it was theirs too. But while Monica was gaining momentum, there were others who were beginning to notice her rise, and not all of them were thrilled. Local political figures who had once dismissed her were now growing concerned. Some tried to downplay her campaign, questioning her qualifications and dismissing her as an idealist. They branded her as too inexperienced and suggested that a woman like her could never go far in the rough and tumble world of national politics. Yet the more they tried to dismiss her, the more determined Monica became. Every day she woke up to face the uphill battle, Monica thought about the fine, about Judge Thompson's cold dismissal of her earlier. In a way, that courtroom moment had become a defining point in her life. She had walked into that room expecting to be treated with respect, expecting that her work would be seen as meaningful. When that didn't happen, it stung. But instead of retreating into bitterness or anger, Monica channeled those feelings into fuel for her campaign. She knew she could make a difference. She had already made a difference in her own community, and she had no intention of stopping now. As the weeks passed, her public presence grew. Monica spoke at rallies, attended town halls, and appeared in interviews. The more she shared her vision, the more her message resonated with people across the country. She spoke of economic equality, education reform, affordable health care, and the need to address systemic racism. Her message wasn't one of empty promises. It was one grounded in real, lived experience. Monica wasn't talking about hypothetical issues or distant problems. She was speaking about the struggles that people in her community, and in communities like hers, faced every single day. Her popularity surged, and it wasn't long before the media began paying closer attention. They couldn't ignore her anymore. The underdog story of a woman from a small town, rising against the odds to run for the highest office in the land, was too powerful to ignore. Monica became a symbol of hope for those who had always been told they didn't belong in the political conversation. But as her national profile grew, so did the pressure. The criticism from her opponents grew louder. Some tried to tear down her credibility, questioning her ability to lead on the national stage. They focused on her lack of experience in politics and tried to frame her as an outsider. But Monica remained steadfast. She didn't need decades of political experience. What she had was something far more valuable: a deep understanding of the struggles faced by ordinary people and a fierce determination to fight for change. With every challenge that came her way, Monica's resolve only grew stronger. She knew that this wasn't going to be easy, but she had never been afraid of hard work. And this time, the stakes were higher than ever. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, Monica's campaign became a movement. And while her opponents underestimated her, she continued to rise, knowing that her mission was bigger than any obstacle in her path. The day Monica Reynolds officially announced her candidacy for president, the world seemed to pause for a brief moment. Her press conference was held in a small but vibrant community center, the same one that had been at the heart of her fight all along. It was packed with supporters, old and new, each person eager to witness the beginning of something unprecedented. As she took the stage, the room fell silent, every eye on her. She had always been a woman of grace and purpose, but today there was a fire in her that was undeniable. Monica's voice rang out clear and strong as she addressed the crowd. "I'm running for president, not because I think it'll be easy," she began, her words cutting through the tension in the room, "but because it's time for someone who truly understands the struggles of everyday people to lead this country." The crowd erupted into applause, but Monica knew this was only the beginning. The decision to run for president wasn't one she had taken lightly. It had come after countless hours of reflection, consultations with close friends, and conversations with the people she had spent her life serving. But now, standing before them, Monica felt a sense of calmness wash over her. She had made the right choice, and the words she spoke next were a reflection of everything she had worked for. "This isn't just about me," she continued, her eyes scanning the room. "This is about all of us, the people who've been overlooked, the families who struggle to make ends meet, the communities who feel forgotten. I'm here because I believe in the power of change, and I know we can build a future that works for everyone, not just the privileged few." The room was filled with cheers, some loud and celebratory, others quiet and thoughtful. Monica could see it in their faces. This wasn't just a moment of excitement, it was a moment of recognition. They believed in her, and for many, that belief had started the moment they had read Kara Miller's interview, the one that had put Monica's story into the public's eye. But this moment was different. This was no longer just a local story. Monica was stepping into a new role, one that would challenge everything she had known. Judge Thompson, the very man who had fined her months ago, watched the live stream of the announcement from his home. He sat back in his chair stunned. Monica Reynolds wasn't the same woman he had seen standing in his courtroom. She had evolved, transformed by her experiences, and now she was taking on the most powerful office in the country. For the first time, Judge Thompson found himself questioning his own judgment. He had dismissed her so easily before, and now he was forced to confront the truth. Monica was no ordinary woman. She was a force to be reckoned with. As the press conference came to a close, Monica addressed the cameras. "I am not a career politician," she said. "I am someone who's worked in the trenches, someone who's seen firsthand what happens when the system fails. I know how to fight for what's right, and I'm ready to take that fight to Washington." The media outlets that covered her announcement were quick to comment on the significance of her candidacy. They described Monica not as just a local leader, but as a woman who had the potential to disrupt the status quo. Monica Reynolds, small-town leader, big-time ambitions, the headlines read. The piece ran on every major news site, some praising her for her courage, others questioning her qualifications. But no one could deny that she was now a legitimate contender. For Monica, it wasn't about the headlines or the media attention. She had come to understand that her message wasn't meant for everyone. She wasn't running to win approval from the powerful or the elite. She was running for the people who had been ignored, the people who were struggling. Her journey had never been about playing by the rules. It had always been about rewriting them. As Monica left the stage that day, surrounded by her team and supporters, she knew the hard work had only just begun. The road to the White House would be long, filled with opposition and skepticism. But as she looked out at the faces of those who believed in her, she knew she had something more powerful than money or connections. She had the trust and the hope of those who needed change the most, and that she knew was enough to carry her forward. The weeks following Monica's announcement were a whirlwind. Her campaign staff worked around the clock, building momentum with grassroots rallies, organizing town halls, and holding countless strategy meetings. Monica herself was everywhere, on the ground, meeting voters, talking to communities, and spreading her message. There was something genuine about her presence, something that transcended the typical polished political image. Monica didn't try to sound perfect. She simply spoke from the heart, sharing the challenges she had faced and the vision she had for the future. Her team, made up of a diverse group of passionate volunteers, was equally determined. They worked tirelessly, knocking on doors, making phone calls, and engaging with people who had never felt represented in politics before. As the campaign gained steam, Monica's message began to resonate more and more. The people who had long felt forgotten by the political system saw themselves in her, a woman from humble beginnings who had built something meaningful, who understood the struggles they faced. However, the road was far from smooth. As her campaign gained national attention, so did the scrutiny. Monica found herself constantly battling a two-front war. On one hand, she had to contend with her opponents, who were eager to tear down her credibility. On the other hand, the media, always hungry for a sensational story, latched onto every aspect of her personal life. Rumors swirled about her past, her financial situation, and her ability to lead. The bigger Monica's campaign grew, the more the attacks intensified. Her most vocal critic was Gregory Daniels a seasoned senator with decades of experience. He had run his own campaign for the presidency and was seen as one of the frontrunners. To him, Monica was nothing more than a naive disruptor, someone who didn't understand the complexities of national politics. He painted her as an idealist with no real understanding of what it took to lead a country. "She's a nice woman with a nice story," he scoffed in a televised debate, "but she lacks the experience to make the tough decisions. She doesn't have the stomach for it." The media echoed Daniel's sentiments, questioning Monica's qualifications. She had no background in high-stakes diplomacy, no experience in the federal government, no decades of political maneuvering behind her. To some, that made her an outsider, someone who could never bridge the gap between the common folk in Washington, D.C., but Monica didn't back down. Every time she faced criticism, every time the media or her opponents tried to paint her as inexperienced or ill-equipped, Monica fought back with honesty and conviction. She wasn't running to be a politician in the traditional sense. She wasn't interested in the Washington status quo. Her message was simple. It was time for a new kind of leadership, one that put people over politics, empathy over power, and justice over influence. One evening, after a particularly tough day on the campaign trail, Monica sat with her team in a small diner. She had just finished a long day of meetings and rallies, and the exhaustion was palpable. But instead of sinking into defeat, she spoke with a renewed sense of clarity. "I know they think we don't stand a chance," she said, her voice steady. "They think we're a joke, but they don't understand what's happening here. We're not just a campaign. We're a movement, and we are going to change this country." Her words echoed through the small room, and the energy in the diner shifted. Everyone around the table felt it, her conviction, her belief in what they were doing. It wasn't just about winning a political race. It was about something far greater than that. It was about creating a world where every person had a chance, where communities that had long been ignored were given the power to shape their future. From that moment, the momentum for her campaign shifted again. Monica's supporters, reinvigorated by her words, went back into the streets, knocking on more doors, attending more rallies, and sharing her message with even greater fervor. They were no longer just fighting for Monica. They were fighting for a vision of the future they all believed in. As Monica looked out over the crowds of the next rally, she realized that the fight had evolved. It was no longer just about overcoming the media or her opponents. It was about leading a movement that could truly change the fabric of the nation. And despite the setbacks, despite the obstacles, Monica was more determined than ever to keep going. She wasn't just running for office. She was running for something far bigger, a future where people like her, people from the ground up, could finally have their voices heard. And in that moment, Monica knew there was no turning back. As Monica's campaign continued to build steam, the pressure only intensified. The closer she got to the primaries, the more her opponents, both within her own party and from the opposition, began to circle. Gregory Daniels, the seasoned senator who had tried to dismiss her early on, turned up the heat. He relentlessly painted Monica as an idealistic outsider who wasn't prepared to make the hard decisions. Every debate, every public appearance, he sought to frame her as naive, someone who didn't understand the political game. But the more Daniels and others attacked her, the more the public rallied around her. Monica had learned to take the criticism in stride. She knew that the establishment would never welcome her with open arms, but it didn't matter. Her supporters, the people who truly believed in her, saw through the smokescreen of traditional politics. They were tired of the same old rhetoric, the empty promises, and the false hope that the system had so often provided. Monica wasn't just talking about change. She was showing people that it was possible. On the night before the first major primary, Monica gathered her team in the campaign headquarters for one last meeting. The room was buzzing with anticipation. The excitement was palpable, but so was the tension. Every campaign had its pivotal moments, and tomorrow would be one of theirs. It was a make-or-break day, and they all knew it. Monica stood before her team, taking in the faces that had supported her from the very beginning. Some were seasoned political veterans, while others were new to the world of politics. But each of them had believed in Monica from the moment she announced her candidacy, and their dedication showed in everything they did. "We've come a long way," Monica said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "Tomorrow is a big day, but remember, it's just one step. We've already made history just by being here. We've already shown people what's possible." The team responded with enthusiastic applause, but Monica wasn't done yet. "But tomorrow is also about you, every single one of you. This campaign isn't mine, it's ours. We've built something bigger than just a race for the White House. We've built a movement. And no matter what happens tomorrow, I want you all to remember that what we've done is already making a difference." As the team filed out of the room to prepare for the big day, Monica stayed behind for a moment. She stood by the window, looking out at the city lights below. The weight of what she was about to do wasn't lost on her. She was challenging everything, every assumption, every expectation, every obstacle that had been placed in her way. But in that quiet moment, Monica felt more certain than ever that this was the right path. This was her destiny. The next day, the results started to roll in. Early on, the media seemed certain that Monica had no chance. She was the outsider, they said. The establishment candidate would win, they said. But as the numbers came in, something unexpected began to happen. Monica wasn't just holding her own. She was surpassing expectations. In key states, her numbers were higher than anyone had predicted. Her supporters were turning out in droves, and the momentum she had built over the past few months was translating into real votes. The media couldn't ignore her anymore. Monica Reynolds was becoming a force to be reckoned with, and as the night wore on, it became clear that the race wasn't just about her fighting for a chance. It was about the entire country beginning to realize that she was the candidate they had been waiting for. Monica's campaign wasn't about superficial promises. It was about authenticity, about a real connection to the people she sought to serve. And as the results came in, it wasn't just Monica who felt the weight of what was happening. It was her entire team, the volunteers, the supporters, the communities that had once been overlooked. They were part of this historic moment, and together, they were beginning to prove that the power of the people could no longer be ignored. The night was long, and Monica didn't sleep. Instead, she watched the results unfold, trying to absorb the magnitude of what was happening. She had defied the odds once again, And now, there was no turning back. She was officially a contender for the presidency, and no matter how much the establishment tried to resist her, Monica Reynolds was no longer just an underdog. She was a force in the race for the White House. The day after the primaries, Monica woke up to the sound of her phone buzzing incessantly. The result had been a resounding success. News outlets across the country were calling it a political upset. Monica, the small-town woman with no political pedigree, had surpassed the expectations of pundits and opponents alike. Her campaign had gone from being a hopeful underdog to a legitimate contender in the race for the presidency. The victory was sweet, but Monica knew that the hardest part was just beginning. The media was relentless. Interviews, press conferences, and debates were lined up in rapid succession. Monica had to navigate a delicate balance, facing tough questions from the media, defending her platform, and managing the expectations of her supporters. Despite the overwhelming attention, Monica stayed grounded. She remained true to the people who had helped her get this far, those who believed in her when others had doubted. Her message remained consistent: a government that worked for everyone, not just the elites, a government that prioritized the people. However, the opposition wasn't going to let her rise without a fight. Gregory Daniels, who had previously dismissed Monica as an idealist, now found himself scrambling to regain ground. His campaign machine ramped up, launching attacks on Monica's past, her lack of political experience, and even her grassroots approach to funding. The narrative shifted from one of hope and change to one of skepticism and fear. Daniels tried to paint Monica as unqualified, out of touch with reality, and too inexperienced to lead a nation. But Monica didn't let the attacks faze her. In fact, each criticism only fueled her resolve. She knew she wasn't running for president to play the traditional political game. She wasn't interested in the dirty tricks and backroom deals. She was in this because she had a vision for a country that put people first. And that vision resonated more than ever with the people who were looking for a leader who would fight for them, not for political gain. One evening, as Monica was reviewing strategy papers in her campaign headquarters, her chief strategist, Claire, walked in. Claire had been with Monica from the very start, and she had witnessed firsthand the strength Monica had shown in the face of adversity. She sat down beside Monica, a look of quiet admiration on her face. "You're doing it," Claire said softly, her voice filled with awe. "You're really doing it. The country is listening to you." Monica smiled, her eyes tired but determined. "I don't know if they're listening to me, Claire. I think they're listening to themselves. They're hearing their own voices in my words. That's what's powerful." Claire nodded, understanding the sentiment. Monica's campaign was never about her. Her riots had always been about the people who felt voiceless in the current system. It was about creating a space where everyone could have a say, where the voices of everyday Americans were no longer drowned out by the noise of political elites. The following weeks were a blur. The debate started and Monica faced off against Gregory Daniels in the first televised debate. It was clear from the start that Daniels had underestimated her. He attacked her at every turn, trying to provoke her into a mistake. But Monica kept her cool. She wasn't interested in mudslinging or retaliating with empty rhetoric. Instead, she used every question as an opportunity to share her vision, to explain her policies, and to remind the audience of why she was running in the first place. "You can call me inexperienced all you want," Monica said during one heated exchange, "but I've spent my life in the real world, working alongside real people. And I'll take that experience over the empty promises of career politicians any day." The crowd cheered, and even some of her critics couldn't help but nod in agreement. Monica's authenticity had become her greatest asset. People weren't looking for a polished politician. They were looking for someone who understood their struggles and was willing to fight for them. As the weeks turned into months, Monica's campaign continued to gather momentum. Donations poured in from small-dollar contributors who believed in her cause. Volunteers flocked to her events, not because they were being paid or pressured, but because they believed in her mission. The media, once skeptical, began to acknowledge the strength of her campaign. Monica was no longer just a candidate, she was a movement. And then, on a brisk autumn evening, As the general election neared, Monica stood before a crowd of thousands at a rally in Washington, D.C. It was a pivotal moment. The outcome of the election was still uncertain, but Monica knew one thing for sure. She had already won. She had awakened a sense of possibility in the hearts of millions. She had proven that a woman from a small town, with nothing but her belief in change, could challenge the very foundations of the political system. As Monica looked out over the crowd, she felt a sense of pride swell within her. It wasn't just about the White House anymore. It was about the people, about the promise that change was possible if they were willing to fight for it. She wasn't just running for president. She was running to create a world where everyone had a chance to succeed, no matter their background, their race, or their status. And no matter what happened in the election, Monica Reynolds knew that her journey had already changed the course of history.